welcome to Archetype Builds. This is a channel where usually we take a look at an archetype, kind of a paragon, a stereotype from fantasy or fiction. We show you how to play it in your Dungeons & Dragons character. But today we're going to be looking at some very specific examples from one very specific movie. I am of course talking about the upcoming Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie. This will probably come out pretty close to the release time, but I am assuming that you have watched the movie and you are here because you want to know how to play these characters in your D&D games. D&D Beyond was kind enough to release NPC stat blocks for each of the major characters in the movie, including the villains maybe. But these NPC stat blocks are sort of formatted for DMs. These are not player character accessible. So what I've done is I've gone through the NPC stat blocks, tried to figure out how you can approximate that character as best you can, and I'll go through the decisions that you need to make in order to recreate that character's abilities. I'm also going to be making character sheets for each of these at approximately the level they appear to be, and put them on my Patreon, which is where you can get character sheets for all of my builds, all for just $1. What a steal. One thing I do want to note is there are some qualities of these stat blocks which are clearly not recreatable as player characters. Each of these guys have gear that is pretty unique. Some of them have gear that does not exist in any of the existing materials for Dungeons & Dragons, so they've like magic items that you would have to ask your DM to custom homebrew and allow you to have. Some of these items are very powerful, some of them aren't, so maybe you'll have more luck with the ones that are less powerful. They also all, they seem to have varying levels, but they all have way more HP than a leveled character gets to have. If you roll really well on your health rolls, maybe you can get there, but in general, each of them seems to have approximately double the health points that character should have when you're doing the NPC stat block. So I'm not going to talk about HP. Just keep in mind, if you have seen these stat blocks and you go through and you create your character and it's not measuring up in the health department, it's because they have insanely high HP totals. Alright, so let's talk about Doric, the Tiefling Druid. Obviously, this is a great example of where your ancestry and your background are going to diverge. Doric is a Tiefling genetically, but was raised in a Wood Elf enclave. So she's got kind of the background is Wood Elf, she was raised by Wood Elves, but then ancestry is Tiefling. And both of those are really coming through here. It says explicitly she is a Circle of the Moon Druid, so she is focused on her wild shape. And so I think that that's a pretty easy series of decisions. You're going to go Tiefling race, background, probably something like an Outlander or, someone from nature. And you are looking for the Druid class and Moon Druid subclasses. That's pretty simple. I do see on here that she's got proficiency in insight, nature, perception, and survival. All make total sense for that character, and a lot of wisdom skills there. High wisdom on this character, and that's what you're going to want to buff. She has her change shape ability, which includes Owlbear. If you're using the new 1D&D rules, Owlbear is explicitly permitted in the wild shape, which that's pretty cool. And then I do see that Doric has 5 uses of her change shape. That is too many for your druid character, but you'll get your normal number of wild shape uses. Lastly, I wanted to call out she uses a sling when she's not in form, and she also has Fiery Rebuke, which is a spell that you can pick up on your spell list. Probably she's getting this from her racial feature. Is going to give you the Fiery Hellish Rebuke so that you can use that as a reaction. Hers is called Fiery Rebuke. It's the same kind of concept, and you'll get to have that effect. One thing I'll also notice, so she's got these first level spells here, Animal Messenger, Beast Sense, Speak with Animals, Cure Wounds, Entangle, Fairy Fire, and Thunderwave. All of those are first level, but judging by her stats, her hit points, her proficiency, and especially this the multi-attack on her wild shape. Multi-attack's really only supposed to come in at level 5, So she should have access to second and third level spells according to the rest of the features, but no second or third level spells are on here. So I think you've got some leeway to add whatever you want in terms of second and third level spells to this character. But this looks like approximately a 5th level druid. Edgin Darvis. Edgin? Do they say that in the trailer? Do they say his name? I don't think they ever mention. Is it Edgin? Edgin. Edgin is pretty bard. Edgin Darvis has a talent for improvisation and strategy. He is indeed the bard. It does say that he used to be a member of a thieves guild, but I don't see any hint of a multi-class rogue here. So this is a full bard character. However, I did notice that he has multi-attack. He makes 2 attacks when he makes the attack action on his turn. He's got this fun little magic item of the reinforced flute. It's just kind of a normal weapon. I think this would be pretty easy for your dungeon master to give to you if you wanted to play this character. But he is making 2 attacks, which is not normally a bard feature. So that means he must be either swords or valor bard. Swords bard has these like flourishes that allow you to like do creative things when you take an attack, whereas Valor Bard is going to have bonuses to your Bardic Inspiration that have to do specifically with combat. When I look at his Bardic Inspiration, I don't see any sign that he has Combat Inspiration, which is the Valor ability. And while it doesn't say that he has any of those flourishes from the School of Swords, I'm going to assume that the combat in the movie is pretty flashy or interesting. So let's go ahead and say that he's a Swords Bard. Swords Bard should be... They get multi-attack at level 6. I see his highest level spell slot is a 2nd level spell. So presumably they've done the same. They just haven't added those higher level spells to Edgin. But this is looking like about a level 6 Bard to me. Of course, he's got those great stats, the proficiency in deception, performance, persuasion, and sleight of hand. Rocking that great +10 to performance and persuasion. Absolutely great stats there. Of course, he's also got disorienting words. This looks like just a played up version of Vicious Mockery, so I would grab Vicious Mockery. It's a classic bard staple, and he uses it to great effect in his disorienting words ability here. All right, Holga Kilgore. This one was actually kind of a challenge, even though it's one of those more basic classes. So Holga is obviously a barbarian. We see that in a lot of places. First of all, the unarmored defense I think comes through really well. The character is very lightly armored. There's the reckless ability, which is staple of the barbarian rage, but there's not really a good sense of which type of barbarian she is, what subclass she has taken here. We can tell from the multi-attack she's at least a level 5, but what's this? Multi-attack is making 3 Darksteel Great Axe attacks rather than 2. Normally barbarians don't get that, which confused me until I realized this is probably a Berserker barbarian. Berserkers get that extra attack with their bonus action. It's the kind of thing that if you were making an NPC stat block would be much cleaner to just roll up into 3 attacks on the attack action. So that's what I think we're looking at here. We're looking at a Berserker Barbarian based on everything else, probably also in the range of level 5. And she's got this great magic item, the Darksteel Great Axe. That's very cool. And of course, on a personal note, love that Michelle Rodriguez is playing this character. Notable D&D player and friend of even more notable D&D player Vin Diesel. Very excited that she gets to participate in the movie. I love it when the actors are fans of the content. As a side note, she also has improvised weapon proficiency and wrestling. So this is clearly a tavern brawler. She's a human. So my assumption here is that we are looking at a variant human who's taken the tavern brawler feat to start at level 1. And otherwise bumped strength here. That is what I think I'm seeing. So you go human, Variant human with the Tavern Brawler feat. You pick your Barbarian, you level up, you get to subclass and take Path of the Berserker. And now you are pretty much right there where Holga Kilgore is. Simon! Simon, last name is going to be tough. I'm not familiar with the lore enough to know how to pronounce Almar? Almar. Simon Almar, looking like a half-elf sorcerer, pretty explicitly a wild magic sorcerer. So we're talking about the half-elf race, which gives him stuff like the Fey ancestry, and then you're going to take your sorcerer class and grab wild magic sorcerer, so he does his wild magic surges. To me. Looks like he's also got the shield spell. His is this kind of like bigger 10-foot dome that can cover allies. I think you're going to feel very similar casting the normal shield spell when you cast that. He's also got this crazy quarterstaff. It says he can make 3 quarterstaff attacks as a sorcerer, so I'm just gonna assume that that's a special quality of the quarterstaff. That's a magic quarterstaff that he's got, because that would be crazy for a sorcerer to make 3 attacks. I love that those 3 attacks are being made -1 to hit and damage because of his strength is so low. He's also got Chaos Bolt, which I love for wild magic sorcerers. And Simon is clearly higher level than the rest of the group. His highest level spell seems to be a Big B's Hand, which is a 5th level spell. So we're probably talking about a 9th level sorcerer here, if I haven't missed my guess, which is significantly more powerful than our what looks to be 5th and 6th level Druid, Bard, and Barbarian. Magic. This tracks because, as I mentioned, the hit points seem to be double what they should be. He's marking 18d8 to his hit points for hit die. Half of 18 would be 9, which would get you, a 5th level spell slot. So that makes sense. However, that would put Holga at 8th level, Edgin at 9th level himself, which would be quite crazy given his very small spells. And then Doric at 8th level. Maybe this is an 8th level party. I don't know. That's pretty wild, though. And he's still a level above that. I'm also going to go for, what is it, Zenk Yendar. It does say explicitly that he is human. He's this sort of like immortal human, having divine energy preserve him. Zenk has a pretty strange gear setup. So from what I see, from his bonus actions, his dagger sword can take the form of either a long sword or a short sword and dagger. And he's got a bunch of different attacks depending on that. The long sword seems to be able to detach the blade and fire like a projectile at an enemy and then return itself to the blade. Obviously, this is not a magic item that exists in any of the supplemental materials in D&D. It's purely made up for the movie, so it's going to be very difficult to feel like Zenk Yandar without this magic item. With that said, none of these attacks are particularly crazy. Longsword, you're getting a +8 to hit and doing a d10 +4 damage. He's also adding this radiant damage, presumably a smite, to each of these attacks. He's using a d12. You're going to be using a d8, but that's okay. And it is possible to equip your paladin with a longsword, a short sword, and a dagger, and to kind of like stow or bring them out as needed for that interaction. There's probably some fighting styles that you're going to want to make this work. Potentially 2-weapon fighting for the short sword and dagger. The long sword, of course, could always benefit from something like great weapon fighting. Not great weapon master, but great weapon fighting. Xandar's got his Aura of Protection, which is great. They've taken the Charisma bonus and made it advantage. I'm not sure which is necessarily better. Probably the Charisma bonus. So your character might have a better Aura of Protection than he does. And then they've put a little Cleansing Touch on him that I also think that the standard Paladin Cleansing Touch is a little better. Overall, though, his level is clearly higher. His hit points, he's rocking 21d8 hit points. So if we take the half of that, he's about a level 10 Paladin. That's consistent with his proficiency bonus, which is a +4. It's higher than everybody else. And you can see he's well balanced between strength, constitution, and his wisdom and charisma are both very high as well. As a side note, the multi-attack here once again gives him 3 attacks when that's not a thing that paladins normally get. Since he doesn't have any spellcasting of any kind, he kind of feels more like a paladin fighter multi-class. For his subclass, there's nothing about the stat block whatsoever that tells us what his subclass is, and so you might be confused. Unfortunately, his description takes all the mystery out of it. It says he has sworn an oath of devotion to aid the innocent, so that's going to be an oath of devotion paladin. Alright, just 2 more characters to go. These are clearly not in the core party, and they also are not likely something that you can play as a character, but I did want to address them since we're doing the video anyway. Forge Fitzwilliam is some kind of wacky, crazy swashbuckler. He's got a maxed out charisma score, and it says that he adds his charisma to his AC, which is not a feature anyone has. That's not something that you can get, but the swashbuckler does add their charisma to their initiative score. So if you want to play a high charisma rogue, swashbuckler is probably the way to go. Everything else he's got, evasion, cunning action, uncanny dodge, all of that seems to be standard rogue stuff. He adds a ton of damage to his weapons from dagger and heavy crossbow. So you probably want to pick up the poisoner feat and be poisoning your weapons with something. Other than that, I think that this is a standard swashbuckler rogue. He does have this double cross feature, which is absolutely not a thing in D&D. So you're also going to have to do without that. But it says if he hits a creature friendly to him with an attack roll, attack is automatically a crit. I'm guessing that that might come up in the movie. I haven't seen it yet. I want to. He's got 20d8 for his hit dice, so I'm guessing he's around a level 10, which is consistent with his challenge rating 8 rating here. Lastly, I did want to talk about our villain, Sophina, Red Wizard of Thay. She is a specialty in necromantic magic, so we are talking about a necromancer wizard, and based on her challenge rating and hit points and everything, I think this is probably fully a level like 18 necromancer wizard. She's got up to 9th level spells, including Meteor Swarm, Time Stop, and then she's also got like Finger of Death. It's a 7th level spell, so clearly very high level, single-classed wizard. The thing that is funny to me is Necrotic Strike here. It's +10 to hit, reach 120 feet, and it does 5d10 plus 5 necrotic damage on a hit. And she makes 3 necrotic strikes per attack action. This is the equivalent of Negative Energy Flood, which is a 5th level spell. So she's popping 3 5th level spells without expending any resources every turn on her attack. That is like competitive with 9th level spells. That is quite a good attack there. So perhaps that's why our heroes needed all those extra hit points. And with that, that's all the characters from Honor Among Thieves. Very, very excited for the movie. Like I said, I'm going to be putting all these decisions into real character sheets on my Patreon for you to get if you are a patron. And I hope that you enjoyed the movie and look forward to embodying these characters in your games.